stuck in this situation. And so much so where, and you've seen all the stats where the city of Cincinnati, when 2 years ago hit the second worst in the country for child poverty, second highest rate, surpassed 50% of kids growing up in the city in poverty. Only after Detroit, we're only marginally better now. I think Cleveland might have beat us out in recent years. But that headline caught obviously a lot of people's attention. Whether you believe it that it's morally unacceptable, or you believe it that our community can't be a great city, great community with this divide. A lot of people now recognize that this is the seminal challenge that we have to tackle together. And the stats are daunting. I mean, the poverty rate overall, and you know the poverty rate is woefully inadequate to capture really what it takes for people to get by. It's the stat that everybody talks about. And the poverty rate in the city and the region have been, again, on the uptick through the recession and haven't gotten any better despite improvements in employment. We look at double the poverty rate for a closer measure of what it actually takes for a family to make ends meet. That's still basic, not really there. For a family of four, double the poverty rate is about $48,000. And that's still basically not enough to get by. But by that measure, double the official poverty rate across our entire tri-state region, not just the city, but across our entire tri-state region, nearly a third of our entire population, 600,000 people, are not self-sufficient by that measure, below 200% of poverty. In the city, it's much more dire, 60+%. And the child poverty rate, which again is really just a measure of the parents of the household that the children are in, has doubled in our region since 1970. In the city, it's nearly half of all kids growing up in a poor household. For African Americans, it's 3/4, which is shameful for our community. And the county is marginally better, the region as a whole, but the reality is that poverty is not isolated in the urban core. It's actually the rate of increase in the suburbs, in places like where I grew up in Finneytown, has surpassed even growth for poverty in the urban core. So it's a regional issue that affects all of us in many ways. And I think again, there is a growing understanding and a commitment from a lot of parts of our community that we have to do something differently. What that is, we don't know yet. So that's where we are right now. We have a lot of ideas at United Way. We think a lot of the work around breaking the cycle through investments early on to help kids get on a good path are important. We think helping people get access to good jobs and support them in those good jobs has got to be a part of it. We know housing is important. We know mental health. I mean, all these is a tremendously complex set of issues. And we have a lot of expertise and insight from many parts of our community on how we can tackle this. So the question and the challenge ahead of us is how do we really harness all those insights from all segments of our community to figure out what we're actually going to do to start moving the needle. So the Child Poverty Collaborative, again, was announced late last fall by the mayor, but it's broader than the mayor's playing a key role. He's one of we have 6 co-chairs, which is a little unwieldy to manage. A really strong group of leaders. The mayor is one, Michael Fisher with Children's is another, Donna Jones-Baker with the Urban League, Adele Owens with the city health department, Sister Sally Duffy with SC Ministry Foundation, and Tom Williams, prominent business leader, are the 6 co-chairs. We have a broader steering committee, about 35, 40 cross-sector leaders like Gwen and many that you may know, from faith, from nonprofit, from philanthropic, from business. And we have literally hundreds of others that we want to engage, that want to be involved as well. And our challenge now is figuring out a meaningful way to do that. The approach that we want to take is again to build, by this fall, October, November, build a plan that this is not like one of those things where we're going to have a plan, we're going to execute it, and then call it a success in 2 years. I think there's broad recognition that this is a generational effort. It's going to take, we got here over decades, and it's going to take decades, 10, 20 years, to make really substantial progress on this issue. With that said, we want to set some initial goals that we can really hold ourselves accountable for achieving, and the goals that you might have heard of that the mayor announced was 5 years, 10,000 kids out of poverty, 5,000 adults out of poverty in the county. Hamilton County is the initial focus, which would be a 22% reduction of the poverty rate in the county, which would be the lowest it's ever been in decades. So it's quite daunting. But again, because the effort is focused on really long-term how to change the trajectory, 10,000 is not nearly enough, right? We've got 100,000 kids growing up in poverty across our region. So the effort's really framed around short-term and long-term, how can we really change the trajectory? And this was something I was talking about earlier with Carl about, is everything on the table, right? Are we going to talk about wages? Are we going to talk about racism? Are we going to talk about housing and segregation? At least initially, we haven't made any decisions yet, so when it comes time to make decisions about what we're going to do, we'll see how true this is. But we've said that there can't be any kind of sacred cows on this issue because we've collectively failed, and the system that we've created has collectively failed. Employers, funders, policymakers, community, across the board, we're all in this one together, right? We're all part of the solution, but we got to be open to every possible idea. So we'll see. We'll test how true that might be with how aggressive we can be about some of the changes we want to make. We know that it's not nearly just about better programs, right? Or getting a great program from another community and bringing it here. It's got to be about, and it's, I think, pretty broad recognition that it's got to be about changing policy, local, state. It's much harder for federal, but changing policy, local and state policy. Changing how funders, like United Way, fund. So we put everything on the table and said we're open to thinking through a new approach. Changing how employers from how they hire, how they recruit, how they train, how they pay. All these issues across the board are on the table for us to figure out. Because again, we view this, and we're viewing this as a systemic failure and requiring a systemic solution. So everything's going to be on the table. How we want to go about doing this, at least initially, and I want your thinking and feedback on this. Again, the idea is how can we really get the insight on this issue about why are we where we are, and what can be done about it. What are the root causes to this problem, and what are the solutions from every segment of our community. People, again, who've been working on this issue for years, many of our partners at United Way, many people like you, people who are living in poverty now. Far too often we don't ask or listen to their ideas for what could be different. We want to get insights from across the community. So we've set another kind of audacious goal to have at least 100 community conversations over the coming months that are trained and or hosted by people in the community. Many of you, we could ask if you'd be interested in joining us with this, that we would help train and have conversations with their constituency where people are, not a formal kind of focus group, but a conversation about these issues, and get that in a way that we can actually make sense of all that input from across the community to help inform the actual action plan. Okay, we can come back to that in a minute. But that's our idea, and we'll have at least 2 broader community summits, the first one in May, where we start to bring together and synthesize some of these learnings that we're having from the community conversations. And we've also brought a commission of the RAND Corporation, and this is, people are going to say, we don't need another study. We've been studying this issue for years. Believe me, I know that. We do a lot of studies, and we have studied this inside and out. The value that RAND is going to bring is, one, for people who haven't studied this issue for years, who haven't thought about this issue for years, it provides some outside validation that is important, not only about the issue, but about what strategies could work. And that is important. For our business community, it's important, and for others, to have an outside view of what are the key drivers that have led to this issue. Right, we have ideas. I have ideas around the economic changes, the demographic changes, the segregation, the policy issues that have led to this issue. But we want an outside analysis to say, here are the key drivers that are leading to why Cincinnati, in particular, has such a high child poverty rate. And then what's all the evidence suggest? There's no silver bullet and no recipe for what we should do. But what's all the evidence suggest could be effective and working, stacked up against what we already have at play in our community. Because we have a lot of things that are making a difference. They might not be sufficiently scaled, they might not be sufficiently connected to each other or coordinated, but we want to have an outside view of what is working. And then importantly, and probably the most controversially, they're going to be looking at all the money. There's a lot of money, public money and private philanthropic money, somehow addressing or seeking to address this issue, if not directly moving people or children out of poverty, at least alleviating the impact of it. And they're going to, and we've asked them to look at all the funding streams coming into our community to address this issue and how we might make sure they're going towards things that actually work. I have no idea what they're going to say, but that's going to be the
We have a lot of money.
So, what's that?
There is a lot of money in that community.
There is a lot.
You know, where's it going?
Billions. So, that's what Randy's going to do. But importantly, again, we want to match that, if not exceed it, with insights from our own community, because we can't rely on the outside experts. We have a lot of expertise here, which is why we want to have these community conversations across the whole community to get insights from everybody. We're at the very beginning of that process. In April, we'll start to launch into asking for folks and partners to join us to host these community conversations and start to roll